Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
When I first started practicing law, for those who don't know, I started my career in public accounting. I had an MBA, I had a law degree, started my career in public accounting as a tax consultant. Didn't want to do it for the rest of my life, so after about 6 years, I went into private practice. And when I started in private practice, being in business is tough. We all know that. It's tough. If you're in business, you realize that. Having a career isn't easy. Nothing's easy out there. It's not supposed to be easy. If you're really trying to achieve something, it's going to be difficult. That's just the nature of it. If it were easy, everybody would do it. But when I started out in the practice of law, it was January of 1995. And I remember that January, I didn't put a lot of pressure on myself, right? Just want to get out there. I want to meet people. I want to kind of kick this thing off. I had some goals, some revenue goals, and I hit them. And then February was a little more, put a little more pressure on myself. March, April, May, and I had these escalating goals, and I kept hitting them. And everything was great. And then June hit, and the bottom fell out. I mean, the bottom fell out. Nothing was happening. Nobody was doing any sort of business, and I was in a total panic. And my wife told me, she says, "I don't know what's worse, when you're busy or when you don't have anything to do." And I told her, well, I know what's worse. When you're busy, you can kind of control it. When you have nothing to do, there's a lot of times you don't have any control over it. But what I noticed was, or I started to figure out, because then it happened in June, and then it happened again in September, and then it happened again in December. And I noticed it had to do with sort of the cycle of kids in school and what people are doing. And, in June, certainly in Ohio, kids are getting out of school, families are going on vacations, not a whole lot's happening. And not every family's going on vacation, but it kind of just trickled down and through to everybody. And so there wasn't a lot happening in June. And then when you got to August and September, late August, early September, kids are going back to school. People are gearing up for that. Not a lot's going on. September wasn't a great month. And, we can certainly talk about the holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, things start to, they just naturally taper off. Now, I didn't have kids in school when I started in private practice. And when I was in school, I never really, when you're living something, you're not really observing it. And I wasn't really observing what was going on when I was in third grade or sixth grade or 12th grade or sophomore in college. I was just living it. And hey, this is what it is. And this is my life. But when you're out there and you don't have kids, you're not really in tune to, okay, school starts next week. Got to figure out the bus schedule, or got to figure out, we're going to pack lunches or buy lunches at school. I had to try and figure all those things out. So I was kind of oblivious to things. But in time, I realized that, okay, there's a cycle here, and I can do something with this cycle. And so in future years, and I didn't practice law for long because I got into what is now AmSpirit Business Connections, and but still those same ups and downs hold. But I started to realize that there were going to be downtime. September was always going to be down, maybe not the whole month, and it wasn't going to be as down as much as that first year, because I really got myself established. But it was always going to be down. And I just realized, okay, I just need to change the focus of what I'm trying to do. And it's the same thing with respect to when the summer is ending and kids are going back to school, and certainly the holidays. And we're, that week between Christmas and New Year's, whether you celebrate or not, it's really kind of a down thing. There's not a lot going on. There's not a lot of normal business. People tend to take their vacations, or they might opt to go into the office knowing that, hey, it's really an easy week to be in the office. So what I want to talk about today is how to capitalize on networking during the holiday lull, or really any lull. Again, it could be the one that comes in June, or maybe it's May, depending upon when schools get out in your area, or it might be the one that comes towards the end of summer in the United States. I don't know what they do down in Australia in the Southern Hemisphere when their seasons are flipped. I should ask that question because I do know people down there. And so, as far as capitalizing on this time, just some things to think about. The first thing, and what I'm not advocating is I'm not advocating just taking the week off. I'm not advocating working like a dog either. But I think this is a useful time that you can make some headway with respect to networking. Even a couple hours, even a few calls, even just something kind of keeps you moving forward. And there's some different things that you can do because you catch people in a different mindset. So the first thing is really setting the notion that you're going to intend to do something with it. Have a game plan. Just I'm going to do something. This is really what I want to try to get accomplished in those 7 days. Or 7 days between Christmas and New Year. And it might be a little longer depending upon when you're celebrating and what's going on. People might have more time or maybe less time depending upon travel. But set an intention to really capitalize on that downtime. One of the things you can certainly do is you can set up just some virtual meetings, virtual coffees, people call them. Um, People tend to be freer during this time, and so might be more open to that. I would caution you, however, there was one year where I set a bunch of these up. Hey, this is great. These are people that I can meet with, and it's not really digging into normal busy time. I run an organization. I've got hundreds of members. I've got dozens of directors, franchisee types. Um, I'm busy. There's always something going on. And so it's nice when there's that time where really nothing's going on. And certainly, uh, a week before Christmas and then the week between Christmas and New Year, there's not a lot going on in the typical Am Spirit Business Connections world. And so I can take advantage of that. And I schedule a lot of calls, and one by one, they would get canceled. And it, for whatever reason, and these were people that I knew, but if you're going to do these kinds of virtual calls, you need to certainly follow up with people. What I do anymore is I don't schedule first time calls during that period. It's people that I know. We use it as a chance to reconnect. A friend of mine, Andrew Stotts, who's over in Thailand, 12-hour, 13-hour difference, depending upon daylight savings time. It's always difficult for us to have a call. Summer months are, it's not a big deal for me to be up early or working late. And we're always the opposite of one another. It's the same for him. But the holidays, it's like, okay, you know what? If I'm up late, it's not a big deal. But it's a good time to have those sorts of virtual holidays. Um, it's a great time to just sit back and kind of reflect on the year. Just to sit, and I know people who do this. I'll do it. I'll sit and I'll just go through. I use a digital calendar. Go through count, week by week. It doesn't take a lot of time to go week by week and just take notes. Okay, yeah, I met Mara this year. That's right. That was a great connection. Um, and that's a connection I need to continue to try and make happen, and just take notes on things that worked and things that didn't work, so you can kind of plan out what it is that you're going to be doing. So you need to reflect on the year and sit and go through that. um, Obviously it's the holidays. It's a great time to be it's a great time to really kind of be thankful. I get it. In the United States, we have Thanksgiving. Canada has Thanksgiving. It's another time, certainly, to be thankful, but just to extend some gratitude to the people who really matter. I always look back, and it's easy for me to look and see the franchisees I have in the organization. There's always new franchisees. There's people who've been around a long time, seeing what they're about and seeing just hey, thanks for being in my world. It's you've really helped me in one form or another. And certainly in this lull time, what the other thing I find is that virtual coffees are great, but actual coffees, people life slows down for people. They're not having to race off and get to that Monday sales call all the time. Um, it, it- or whatever, they don't have to. They're not racing to the office. It's just quieter, and even if they're working, it's just quieter, and so you can get out and you can meet somebody for a cup of coffee. It just makes it that much easier, if you will. Um, the other thing, in addition to looking at your contacts, um, is is reflecting on the lessons that you've learned. I always tell people, I joke about it. I say, I don't make the same mistake twice, but I'm very creative about coming up with new mistakes. Um, and there's a degree of truth to that because there's always something that I'm learning. Geez, I wish this or I wish that, um, over the last year. I need to do more of this sort of networking and less of this sort of networking. I need to commit to learning something new, or you need to commit to putting more time into this. I met James through this particular situation. That seemed to work. Met a few more people. Maybe I need to really put more time into that. Um, and it's also a great time in that week where you have some downtime, and again, for me and maybe for a lot of you, it's just I feel like many days, normal days outside of holidays and these lull periods, life's coming at me. I feel like I'm drinking from a fire hose, and I'm just trying to keep up with things, and just things just notch down a little bit, and I just feel like I can do certain things, like really being intentional about giving back to my network, and there's something about the quiet time and just sitting and just being kind of quiet with yourself. And again, I'm not advocating spending your whole holiday doing this, but go have a cup of coffee and sit in the kitchen and just think about it. It's like, you know what, I need to do something for this person. I need to, I'm thinking about two people and they don't know each other. And how could I have been so blind as to not to reconnect, or how to be so blind as to not connect them? I'm going to take the time to go ahead and do that. So the the lesson with respect to today, and ongoing, and if you're catching this, well, if you're catching this at any point, there are always going to be lulls that you can take advantage of. In the Midwest and the Northeast, we have snow days, across the snow belt, the upper Midwest, and across we have snow days. We have a couple of those days where you just kind of, you know what, I'm not going anywhere. Nothing's happening. My meetings are canceled. Um, people, even though we can Zoom, people cancel a lot of stuff. These same sort of things can apply, where all of a sudden we find ourselves with this lull. And again, enjoy the lull, enjoy the downtime, enjoy the time between Christmas and New Year, even if you don't celebrate. Um, enjoy the time, but also be intentional about networking someone. Get something done. It's a good time to build relationships, even though it's not really a hard charging business time of year. And you can get a few things done, and you're that much better off when you're starting to roll into the next phase, when the lull sorts of ends. When the lull sort of ends, I should say. Um, and it might be the new year, it might be the summertime, it might be kids getting back to school, but we're going to have these peaks and valleys, and you need to learn to take advantage of them.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AMSPIRIT.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.